You don't have any Stephen King?
You've got the shinin.
You mean shiny.
Shh. You wanna get sued?
It's just your fate. You're that geeky Stephen King kid. There's one of you in every school.
Okay, that's him. That's Cujo.
I was thinking along the lines of no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Oh, crazy.
Don't mind if I do!
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King, hosted by two lifelong constant readers. We do non-spoiler and spoiler reviews of King's published work and take a critical look at his film and television adaptations as well. We also discuss the latest King news and check in with each other on our ongoing King obsessions. It's the podcast where all things serve the King. You can find more of our work at towerjunkiespod.com, and you can also like the Facebook page at facebook.com/towerjunkiespod, and follow us on Twitter and every other level of social media at towerjunkiespod. I've also started making some TikTok videos on quote-unquote book talk, so check that out at OV Podcasts. And if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for an obscene amount of bonus content spread across all of obsessiveviewer.com's various podcasts. Recently on the Patreon, I have been continuing my weekly installment series that I have dubbed The Church of King, where every Sunday I review something Stephen King related. That has been going this year alone for 30 consecutive weeks.
Dang.
Yeah, every Sunday. And I'm finishing off 2023 with a 4-part series on Full Dark No Stars. So that will be what I'm kind of concluding the year with. But right now I have just finished, by the time everyone's listening to this, because I'm posting this on Tuesday, I just finished my 6-part series on Everything's Eventual, which is hence why we're reviewing what we're reviewing tonight. And previous to that, I did a whole read-along series on everything Holly Gibney and a bunch of other short fiction collections. So like I said, it's up there, and then that is like a fraction of the amount of stuff that's on Patreon also. So definitely recommend checking that out, because I put a lot of work into it and I'm very proud of it, and it's a lot of content. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and today on the show we are reviewing both the short story 1408 and its 2007 film adaptation, also titled 1408. And joining me to do that is, of course, my co-host and friend, Tiny. Hi, Tiny. How is it going this evening?
Hey, buddy. I am doing really well. How are you?
Good. Very, very well. Yeah, I'm excited to record some Tower Junkies. And also, I was going to ask you this before we started recording, because I wanted to pitch something to you, but I don't know what your schedule is like in terms of potentially recording anything in December. But given that we're doing 1408, both the short story and the adaptation, in that both of these this movie stars John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, I wanted to pitch the possibility of us covering in 2 episodes in December, the novel Cell and the movie adaptation.
That's funny.
Yeah, because the movie stars John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, and by all accounts that I've heard, it is abysmally bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but maybe that's something we can talk about off mic. But that's my like vision for December on Tower Junkies. But
I kind of forgot about that. I feel like we almost have to, because it's like you can't just not do it because of that. the coincidence there.
Also, to further the coincidence, December 21st, I think, will be Samuel L. Jackson's 75th or 76th birthday. So,
wow.
Yeah. And I'm sure John Cusack probably has stuff going on in December too. I don't know.
Nice. I read Cell. I read the book, and I thought it was okay. And I know I watched the movie.
Oh, did you? Interesting.
But I think I fell asleep like for the last half hour or something like that.
Okay.
And I don't know that I remember any of it at all. Like
that's awesome.
Any of it. So I think I was just checked out when I watched it. But anyways, yeah. I might be game for that.
Nice. And I know that the book is relatively short. I read it too, but way back in like 2010, I think. We probably read it at the same time.
Probably.
When we were working together. But
right.
I know that the movie isn't, and the movie's only like 90 minutes long. But yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll hopefully figure it out.
Word.
Yeah. Yep. But so yeah, we've that's what's on the docket tonight though on the show. And before we get into like our reviews and everything, we obviously always do Stephen King news and check-ins. So I have a couple of news items if you want to go into the news section.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the first piece of news I have is going to be kind of short because I don't think either of us have read this book, but it was announced yesterday as of this recording on November 29th that Lionsgate picks up Stephen King's The Long Walk with Francis Lawrence attached to direct. So it says JT Molnar will write the script. Oh, interesting. So I know. So like what I primarily know Francis Lawrence for is his work directing the Hunger Games movies. I didn't realize that he came back and directed The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which just recently came out. Huh. But how do you feel about this? And have you ever read The Long Walk?
I have not read The Long Walk. No,
me neither. And I've heard it's one of his Bachman books, and I've heard that it is very, very just. It's dark. It's one of those edgy Bachman books. Okay. But also to mention Francis Lawrence is that like he didn't just do the Hunger Games. Obviously, he also directed 2005's Constantine and I Am Legend. So like he's not just like the dystopian YA guy. Which I think I was talking to a friend of mine about this that with the announcement that Francis Lawrence was attached to direct, my immediate like gut reaction was, oh man, Hunger Games. Yeah, like YA dystopian, because I know that The Long Walk has like some dystopian kind of elements to it from like the scant information that I know about it. But also while I was thinking about that, I was thinking that I wonder if my hesitance toward that and my not lack of excitement, but my limited excitement for this is due to residual like burning from the Dark Tower movie and how they kind of tried to make that into kind of a YA tonally like very, very lightly YA. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy, but how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I really like quite a few of Francis Lawrence's movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like I Am Legend.
Yeah,
I really like that. But I don't have any. I don't really know that I know what The Long Walk is about. I'm not familiar with it at all. So let's see. It's pretty early on, obviously. Does it even say if there's a script or anything?
No, it just says that they're working on it. But from what I understand of The Long Walk, well, actually, here we go. First published under the author pseudonym Richard Bachman, The Long Walk centers on an annual contest in which 100 teen boys embark on the punishing titular journey that involves strict stipulations like they must walk at least 4 miles an hour and ends with only one survivor. So that's where kind of the dystopian teen aspect kind of comes in too.
Yeah, that sounds pretty dark.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued for sure. But yeah, I mean, I didn't love the Hunger Games movies, and so
me neither.
I mean, they were fine, but like he tackled the young adult thing pretty well. I mean, for what it was or for what it is. So that definitely has a young adult, a YA tinge to it, I guess. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, and like you said, it does sound pretty dark, but you know what they say, Tiny, and this is going to be a perfect segue to the second news item. It's best if you like it darker. And that's my now that I've said it out loud, very clunky segue to the other piece of news, which is, since the last time we recorded a Tower Junkies episode, a lot of news has broke about the new Stephen King book, which is coming out in... I think it's May 21st, 2024. It is You Like It Darker, a short story collection from King. And it includes 12 short stories. Several have already been published elsewhere, but basically it's a new short story collection, and I'm so excited. A rundown of the stories that are featured there. Like I said, there's 12. One called Two Talented Bastards, The Fifth Step, Willie the Weirdo, Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream, Finn, On Slide In Road, Red Screen, The Turbulence Expert, Lori, Rattlesnakes, The Dreamers, and The Answer Man. And I just realized, like, reading that as a list was terrible for the audience, I'm sure, but of those, Finn was published in 2022, as part of a Scribd kind of exclusive deal. I think I reviewed it on the podcast with Kim C. And then Red Screen was a Humble Bundle charity thing for the ACLU in, I think, 2021, which I actually covered that on Patreon. And I believe that Patreon recording is free to everyone. So you can go on Patreon and find it and listen to it without subscribing or anything. And then also... I think Lori has been previously published somewhere. Willie the Weirdo was published earlier this year, I think, somewhere in I think maybe the New Yorker. But The Turbulence Expert was in Flight or Fright, the collection from a few years ago that Bev Vincent edited, I believe. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is the big news of this and everything is that Rattlesnakes, the story in the collection, is a sequel to Cujo.
Wow.
Yeah. So the short story, there is an excerpt that you can find online from Rattlesnakes, but I haven't read it because I want to kind of go in clean. But I do know that it centers on Vic Trenton, who is the father of the father of the kid in Cujo.
Interesting.
So yeah. Have you ever read Cujo?
I read Cujo back in the famed summer of 1999.
That's right. Yes. How do you feel about this news then?
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, it might inspire me to go back and read it finally.
Yes, it might inspire us to go ahead and cover it on the show. Yeah, so I think that we will probably be covering it on the show. That would be fun to do, just, Cujo and then the movie and then get right into You Like It Darker.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's in May though. But yeah, like I said, this collection comes out May 21st. You can pre-order it on Amazon and Audible and all of that good stuff. The cover art is freaking awesome. Have you seen the cover image?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it is. It's like, it looks like an island or a peninsula. And I didn't even notice this, but it has the look of like an alligator or crocodile. It just it looks really, really cool. Yeah. So I am very much a fan of it. I can't wait. I love new Stephen King.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So that is all that I have for news. I'm trying to discreetly find the cover to send to you. I'm sending you it now.
Sweet.
Both the just regular cover and the kind of full design cover.
Very cool.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm very, very excited about it. Yeah. Yep. So that is all that I have for news. Do you want to go into Stephen King check-ins for this episode?
Absolutely.
Nice. Okay. Well, I have a bunch of stuff that is also going to be some shameless self-promotion, of course, for the Patreon. But how many things do you have? Do you have like...
I mean, really, just the one thing from reading 1408. So
okay. Okay. I'll just rattle off some stuff that I have, and then I'll throw it to you. Did you? Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. Of course, I mentioned before I've been covering Everything's Eventual on Patreon. That's a 6-part series. The 6th part is going to show up on Patreon on Sunday. And it's been fun. It's been fun revisiting that short story collection, which this obviously 1408 is in. As far as his collections are concerned, I would say that Everything's Eventual kind of ranks somewhere in the middle or the lower portions of it. I feel like all of his short story collections and all of his short fiction collections are very strong. Like, they're very awesome. They're cool. They're good. But Everything's Eventual is kind of, it's a little more hit or miss than they usually are. So it's been interesting kind of revisiting it and kind of analyzing some of the stories and in a deeper way than, just firing off a tweet when I finish a story or what have you. Yeah, it's solid, but I'm very excited to go on to the next part of my Church of King project on Patreon, which is Full Dark No Stars. And then I have it all mapped out for 2024 as well. So that's a whole thing. But again, that's at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Something that's not anything that I covered for Patreon, something that I actually did just for fun, and leisure, is in October. I reread Salem's Lot, which is interesting because kind of similar to Everything's Eventual. Salem's Lot is a book that I usually I'm a little back and forth on it. Like, I had fond memories of it now it's more fresh in my mind, but I had fond memories of it from when I first read it, and I've read it a few times in the intervening years. But it's never one that I felt very passionate about. In this read through, it is good. It is a very good novel, and I did gain a little bit more appreciation for it. But I do also just feel like, it has a lot of his good characteristics and good traits, or good writing traits and everything. But these are all things that I've also seen him do better in other stories. So I like Salem's Lot, but yeah, I don't know. If they ever release the movie, the new remake, I'm probably going to push us to review, do a whole series on Salem's Lot, basically. But eventually. But yeah, because I guess I could have put in the news that the rumor is that they're going to dump the Salem's Lot remake that was supposed to come out in 2022. The rumor is that they're looking to just dump it on Max at some point. So
yeah,
we'll see.
kind of a shame. I wasn't really super excited for that anyways. So
yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
A couple other things for my check-ins that are just tangentially related are that I reread Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard Chismar, because I'm going to be reading Becoming the Boogeyman here soon, and I kind of wanted a refresher. And Chasing the Boogeyman is phenomenal. Like, Richard Chismar is like, he's worked with King, and like he's obviously a huge admirer of King. He has Cemetery Dance Publications, which is where he's published a lot of stories through that, and it got the attention of Stephen King, and that's kind of how they hooked up and started working together a little bit. He wrote the Gwendy trilogy with him, but Chasing the Boogeyman is so freaking good. Did you ever read it?
No.
Okay. Do you know what it's about?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, nice. I'm going to give you just a soft pitch that it is Richard Chismar is the main character. He is playing himself, playing himself like he's writing at, like, he's a self-insert, and it is basically him fictionalizing this story of him in his hometown while he was in college, in the hometown being tormented by a serial killer. And it's so interesting because it is a thriller. It's a horror novel. It's a thriller novel, and it also has a lot of true crime aspects to it. But really, what it really is just this loving homage to his hometown and where he grew up. Like, the killings and everything are fictionalized. Like, that's all. It's a fictional story, but it's just so interesting how he takes this specific tone, this specific genre, and creates this love letter to his hometown and his nostalgia and his memories and his childhood through that. It's a very, very unique thriller. So yeah, I really like it and highly, highly recommend it.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
I mean, very creative way for, like a creative fiction writer to almost tell a nonfiction story, or like blend the two, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Very cool idea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My upstairs neighbors are vacuuming, so if you hear anything in the background, that's what that is. The other semi-related thing that's not really related really at all, but it's semi-related to what we're talking about tonight, is that I will have an essay in December posted on MidwestFilmJournal.com. It's an essay about a certain Samuel L. Jackson performance. I don't want to say what it is yet. I don't know why, but basically that's going to be up sometime in December, and it's not 1408 or Cell. It's something not Stephen King related, but I'm very, very proud of the essay, and I recommend checking out Midwest Film Journal.
Sweet.
Yeah. And that's all of the check-ins I have, Tiny. What do you have for us? You said just the 1408 thing, but haven't you reread something recently? Did you, in the last couple of months?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like you did. Well, let me ask you, I'm not going to go into the whole thing. If It Bleeds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we totally read that. Yeah, didn't we?
Yep.
Man, I thought we talked about that already.
No, the last episode of Tower Junkies we had was in September when we finished our Gunslinger series.
Damn, so we haven't even talked about that, have we?
No.
Jeez. Crazy. I remember reading it. I thought we'd already talked about it here.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that falls on me too, because I knew that you were reading it, and then I figured that we would put an episode together, but then I just never followed up on it.
Okay.
So
gotcha. Yeah, I read If It Bleeds. Liked it a lot. I thought it was a very cool way to stay in that universe, the Holly Gibney universe. I like that it wasn't just like Stephen King inserting her into another story. Like it was a follow-up to her, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because she was sort of inserted into The Outsider, which I loved. Like, I thought that was great. Like, I have no issues with that. And I thought it was a great amalgamation of two of his characters, or it was just a cool idea. But this was, and this isn't even original Holly Gibney stuff. It's not, the trilogy she was a part of originally. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really fun idea. I love the character too. I know Stephen King is like obsessed with her. I don't get it. Like, get a room,
Right.
But yeah, she's a fun character. I enjoy it. I appreciated that. So, and then I did read 1408 for this as well. I was contemplating hopping around to some other short stories on Everything's Eventual. I didn't, because I'm in the middle of another book right now.
Okay.
I'm reading a book called Ghost in the Wires. It's about like hacking in like the early days of like computer hacking, and it was written by a guy named Kevin Mitnick. He like, I'm like halfway through it right now. It's really fascinating. Like, he started before the internet existed and before computers were even really a thing. He started like basically hacking over telephone lines and like conning people over the phone to get information basically, and builds that into gathering information. And he only ever did it for fun. Like, he never, well, I mean, he mostly did it for fun. Like, he wasn't a hacker trying to he's not like Anonymous or like one of these, he didn't really use it for the most part. Like, he kind of took advantage of a couple things to make some money, but it wasn't like ripping anybody off or stealing anything. It was just loopholes and kind of taking advantage of stuff. But yeah, he's a really interesting guy. It's a cool book so far.
Nice.
It was recommended to me by a coworker. So yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
It's cool.
I'll have to add that to my list. Yeah, and also I should mention that for fans of our friend Kim C from the Year of Underrated Stephen King, she was a guest on Obsessive Viewer, our other show. A couple of weeks ago, she and I reviewed Priscilla, and we also talked a bit about Pet Sematary Bloodlines, and of course went into tangents about Stephen King as well. And we also talked about Mike Flanagan's upcoming The Life of Chuck adaptation. So check that out on Obsessive Viewer, and also check out Obsessive Viewer. If I could plug the other show and everything. But yeah, that was episode 402. You can find that at obsessiveviewer.com/OV402. And yeah, it was a great conversation, and Kim C is awesome. So glad to have her on that show for a minute or couple hours.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so Tiny, that does it for news and check-ins. Do you want to dive into the main event of the episode?
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
Alrighty. So as we normally do, we're going to be reviewing the short story 1408, which can be found in Everything's Eventual, which was published in 2002. This story was originally published in Blood and Smoke in 1999, which is an audiobook in which Stephen King read 3 of his own short stories. And then eventually 2 of them, all 3 of them were published into Everything's Eventual. So, yeah, so since it's a short story, do you want to just go into like free form spoiler talk? Like anything is up for games in terms of the short story, and then when we do the movie review, we can do a non-spoiler and spoiler review.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, cool. Okay, so 1408, like I said, was published in 1999 in Blood and Smoke, and then collected in Everything's Eventual. Tiny, was this your first time reading the short story?
Yes, first time for both.
Oh, interesting. I was curious if you had seen 1408 at any point, because I hadn't either. This for me was my second or third time reading 1408. But what did you think about it, and what things kind of stood out about it for you?
I definitely liked it. I liked it a lot. I think the premise is just a great idea. Because it's, Stephen King has done hotels before, as we all know. And I feel like it'd be easy for him to kind of jump back into that playground and basically do a derivative of what he did with The Shining. Not necessarily the whole Shining, but I mean, like pick just a haunted room, like a room 237 again, do something like that. But he, totally took it a different direction. I think this was it was an attempt to bend the genre a little bit, because it wasn't a straight up ghost story or like a haunting story. It's way more than that, and I really appreciated that. I think the structure was a little goofy because it's very short. I listened to the audiobook and it's like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And I feel like half of that was set up. Which is fine, because that's like my favorite part, actually. I really love the his whole conversation with Olin is like maybe my favorite part of the story. I don't know. Yeah. I love that build up is really cool, and it reminded me of like some of the history of the Overlook Hotel. I mean, that's what it made me think of. And even though, again, it's kind of derivative of The Shining, especially very derivative of The Shining, I didn't care, because it was just entertaining and fun. And, if I had just read The Shining a month ago or something, I'd be like, oh, what the fuck? But, it's far enough removed from that I just didn't mind. So entertaining. But then, once he actually gets to the room, and I'm not saying it wasn't good or like that it was bad or anything, but I feel like it just felt really rushed. And I feel like there was a lot of opportunity there that wasn't explored, maybe, or he didn't take a lot of the paths that he could have, I guess. It was fine. But I kind of appreciated the first half more than anything. But and the ending was pretty cool as well. I did like the ending. So yeah, it was a fun little read. It's only 90 minutes. It's kind of, it's fun to consume short stories. I've really appreciated that. It's something I admittedly need to do more of. So, yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah. I'm trying to find if this was the one that I thought it was, but, basically my understanding, I think that it was this one. I don't have my notes readily available, but basically, I believe that he said that, actually it's right here in the book. Anyway, yeah, I really like this story. It is, like you said, very derivative, or it's similar to, it's very similar to The Shining, especially, that first section of 1408 feels like it is like an alternate version of like Jack Torrance meeting, Mr. Ullman at the Overlook and like learning about things. But King had said, in the author's note, he said, the only unusual thing, blah, blah, blah. He said, I wrote the first 3 or 4 pages as part of an appendix for my On Writing book, wanting to show readers how a story evolves from first draft to second. Most of all, I wanted to provide concrete examples of the principles I had been blathering about in the text, but something nice happened. The story seduced me, and I ended up writing all of it. I think that what scares us varies widely from one individual to the next. But this story scared me while I was working on it. And then he also, well, I'll save that for later. But anyway, he goes on to say that hotel rooms are very different, like very scary and everything. And that the words that he says in that are lifted and used in dialogue in the movie, which I thought was a nice homage. But it's interesting that I feel like if I could like make an excuse for how it's kind of derivative of The Shining, is that, he started it by just using it as a writing exercise and talking about just like the mechanics of writing. So maybe that's why that's the case, but it breathes on its own. Like it does its own, like it forges its own path and tells its own story about a skeptic who is very much a skeptic who is profiting off of other people's beliefs in the supernatural, in hauntings, and he encounters a haunting. And I really like that. And it does feel like a self-contained, it feels like basically King was taking the beginning of The Shining and Jack and Danny's scenes of them in room 217 and just like riffing on that. But like I said, he kind of makes it its own thing about skepticism and proof of hauntings, and it's really solid. I really enjoyed it. You had mentioned that it gets a little goofy, and how the actual haunting aspects in the room, I feel like you say that they didn't really work for you, or were they just not up to your liking? How did you feel about them?
It just felt rushed to me.
That's
like,
right.
In the context of the whole story, it's like an hour and a half, however many pages that is. And half of it is set up. Like 45 minutes of what I listened to was set up, and his conversation with Olin, and that was all really good and felt like meaty, and there was a lot there. But then this felt like rushed. I feel like this should have been like an hour and a half in and of itself, or 2 hours or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
No, I definitely get that. I don't know that I had any issues with the pacing or with the brief nature of it. More importantly to me, I was more kind of taken with the interesting narrative choices with it, like the narrative structure where we kind of have like this third person perspective narrator who is recounting what is on the tape, and we're kind of the journey through his experience, through Mike's experience in room 1408 is basically a recounting of what is being transmitted from a tape that he recorded in it. And that is a very unique and interesting kind of viewpoint to bring us into the haunting experience, because it in and of itself is disorienting and crazy and wild and all over the place. And to have it be presented to us through like these fragments of audio that was recorded in the room is really, really interesting to me. And that's what kind of really held my attention through the increasing craziness of the things going on in 1408.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I kind of forgot about the whole narrative style of someone finding the tape. That is a cool tool to use, I guess, to draw out of the toolbox, if you will, to stick with the analogy. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I guess I maybe I should have paid a little closer. I wish I could have listened to it again.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's true. I guess I kind of forgot about that or discounted that.
That's fair. And like it does, to your point about it feeling rushed. I mean, it is definitely rushed. It does feel rushed, especially it kind of feels like, and maybe this is a bias on my part, or maybe this is just whatever, because in my head I'm thinking of the author's note where he says that he originally wrote the first few pages as a writing exercise for an example in the book on writing, but it kind of seems like the story is broken up into two pieces. It's that prologue where he's talking to Olin, and he's learning about the events in the room, and it's setting the stage for that. And then we have the haunting, the crazy horror stuff. And it feels like this is like a brief, like 50-page excursion through two sides of Stephen King's like writing strengths. So like we have like the character like backstory and just conversation that he is just so great at, and then we immediately go into the like, oh, crazy stuff is happening with increased tension and increased like just detail and disorientation and crazy scary stuff, that it does feel a little bit lopsided, because like to your point, we do spend a lot of time in that buildup. We do spend a lot of time learning about the hotel and the history of the room. And it kind of feels like King couldn't help himself to keeping it as a whole brief. Like, it feels like he, again, going back to the author's note, it feels like he had an idea, started writing it, and then like he was going to keep it short and sweet, and then it got its hooks into him, and so he had no choice but to feed the beast and detail a bunch of stuff, and then partway through he's like, oh yeah, this was supposed to be like an exercise. Okay, we'll just throw a bunch of crazy stuff, which works for me, but and then call it a day. But like, I don't know, I just kind of feel like, had this not been a short story, and if The Shining didn't exist the way that it does, this could have been a full-fledged novel that he could have really built upon.
I'm sure. Yeah. I did like some of the simplicity of the story. Like, for example, right when he, like, before he even goes in the room, like he's looking at the door and it's like canted to one side, looks back and it's straight. And then like, I appreciated the simplicity of that as like an appetizer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was just fun. And I was like, and maybe that was like, you know, part of the build up too. And by that point I was so built up, I was really excited to get to the crazy part. And like, I had never seen the movie, but I had seen like the trailer and the previews for it, and it looked pretty wild. And I was like, man, it looks like there's some crazy shit going on in this hotel room. And so that's kind of what I was thinking. And I feel like reading the book, I didn't get there. I didn't get to the images I had in my head from like that I remember from the trailer and stuff. And maybe that's partly just mismanaged expectations, I think, or not going into it with a clean perspective, or just expecting too much, I guess. But I did like a lot of the simplicity of the story.
That's fair. And to be honest, I'm curious how the movie review is going to go, because there's a lot of stuff added into the movie. Obviously, it expands upon it in a lot of ways, but I mean, spoiler for the movie review, but I really liked it. I think it was pretty strong. And
Same here.
we'll talk about that, but yeah, something else that struck me about the story, which is something I brought up on Patreon, and I'm going to try not to make this a plug for Patreon, I promise. But having said that, I am planning a series of Patreon reviews starting in January that I'm dubbing Flanagan Friday, where I review something Mike Flanagan related every Friday. I'm currently going through The Haunting of Hill House episode by episode, so those will start posting in January. But anyway, shameless self-promotion aside, something that struck me about 1408, the short story, and it's something that I don't have enough knowledge to really dive into, because I haven't. Something that struck me about it was kind of similarities between the story and The Haunting of Hill House. So the premise of 1408 is Mike Enslin. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mike Enslin is a writer who writes about paranormal stuff, who does not believe in paranormal stuff, and he goes to a room and witnesses paranormal stuff. Now, The Haunting of Hill House, the first episode is Stephen sees a ghost, and that plot is Stephen Crane is a person who writes paranormal, like, nonfiction, and is very popular at it. He does not believe in the supernatural. He goes to a house in that first episode, and he spends the night there, and he works through whether or not there's a supernatural presence or not. And the thing that I found so interesting is that I haven't done my due diligence because I haven't read Shirley Jackson's novel, The Haunting of Hill House. So I don't know if the skeptic author plot of The Haunting of Hill House is from the novel, or if that's something that Mike Flanagan put into the show. Either way, I think it's just an interesting interesting thing that it either or someone is influenced by someone else. So Stephen King was either influenced by Shirley Jackson, which I know that he is a fan of Shirley Jackson. He uses some of her writing from The Haunting of Hill House as like an epigraph in Salem's Lot. But I don't know if he was paying homage to her with 1408, or if Mike Flanagan was paying homage to 1408 by incorporating that part of Stephen as a character in the show. And so I don't know. I'll eventually read The Haunting of Hill House and figure out for myself. But I just think that that's an interesting thing through horror history, I guess.
It's a horror orgy.
Yes. Horrorception.
That's funny. I'd forgotten about that part of Hill House. I have not watched that in a while since it came out. I need to rewatch it. Also, I have downloaded. I bought it on Audible. Shirley Jackson's A Haunting of Hill House. So I need to read that.
Yeah,
it's funny you bring that up, but yeah, that's a really good point. That's I'm looking forward to how that all links together too. But I was curious what you thought of the ending of this book, because you can't talk about Stephen King without talking about, was this one of his good endings? Was this one of his bad endings?
Right.
Was this one of his times where he was just like, fuck it, endings don't matter, let's just get this done. I really liked this one, actually. I thought I mean, obviously it's an obvious conclusion to draw that the skeptic is no longer skeptic, right? That's the fun part of the story, right? We all knew that was going to kind of happen, but I like the way that the fact that he is a skeptic, I feel like kind of saved him, because he keeps these little facts and these little pieces of reality stored away in his head that he has, it's easy to look at the cigarette behind the ear as a goofy little MacGuffin, or like a little funny little character trait that makes a boring character interesting. I'm sure there's a term for that I don't know. But it's a bit of a trope, right? A bit of a not always creative trope to have a character that has a goofy little thing like that. Oh, I keep a cigarette behind my ear or whatever. But it's something that comes up and plays a role in the story, along with the book of matches that he has and his goofy Hawaiian shirt. Like, it's all these kind of quirky little things that are maybe forgettable throwaway pieces that he actually uses to snap back to reality and like escape this literal nightmare. And he sets himself / the room on fire to like force himself out of there. And it's like, I feel like all those things would have been dismissed in other stories, or just been one-off little things. And I love how that all came together in the end. And then we end up with our once skeptic lying on the floor, using what could be his last breath to tell somebody, don't go in there. Like, just, I love the conglomeration and the, I love it when a plan comes together, it was just a fun comeuppance of everything. And I really, I appreciate it. I thought it was a really good ending. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's worth noting, I guess, that the Blood and Smoke audiobook collection that I referenced, that has Stephen King reading 3 of his own short stories, the kind of the gimmick of that was that all 3 stories had something, like the plot had something to do with smoking. And like even the cover design of the audiobook like is supposed to look like a cigarette case, which is a weird gimmick that is weird, but it's interesting that it does tie in obviously in the story. But those like little pieces of context like are things that would otherwise just basically make the character just a little bit more 3-dimensional, like little quirks here and there could be like shortcuts to
information about him that you don't really like, that's more just for set dressing. And the way, like you said, the way it comes together is really nice. And there is a sense of completion to the story. And the fact that it didn't go the easy horror route by having him like die and there being no real growth for his character, because he would have died. Or it could have just ended with the shock of him setting himself on fire to escape, but instead he grew from the experience. He now knows that these things are real, and he lives to write another book. Yeah, so I definitely like it. It is a very interesting ending for King in terms of short fiction, and weirdly sort of uplifting. I guess. I don't know if uplifting is the word.
I don't know about uplifting, but I do think it's a positive ending.
Yeah. Positive ending, at least in terms of growth for the character.
Yeah, and the world the world's a better place. It's like the world is kept safe because I feel like, there's these people working to keep the evil of 1408 at bay, and Mike Enslin finds a way around that, and he's famous and he's mixed up in this big thing. So now there's probably, I don't know, that's just my positive spin on it, because what's probably more realistic is that people are like, oh, did you hear about this famous writer who almost died in his hotel room? Let's go check it out. And that's probably the more realistic thing, but I like to think that everyone's like, well, we need to stay the fuck away from there because, it almost killed this famous writer. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just kind of spinning my wheels now, but it was a fun little story. I did like it. Yeah, I do too. Nice. Yeah. I don't know. Do we have anything more to say about the story? I don't think so. The beautiful thing is we got the movie to talk about too.
Exactly. So, I will ask you this. You said that you thought about going back and reading some other Everything's Eventual stories.
Yeah, I know any recs? Any hot recs for me?
Absolutely. I would say, actually, there are a couple that I actually reviewed with Kim C on the podcast previously. But LT's Theory of Pets is one of my absolute favorites from this collection. It is, and I've sang this from the mountains, but basically the audiobook version of it is a freaking treat. It is wonderful because it is Stephen King reading it to an audience in, I think, somewhere in the UK. And it's a live read of it. It's not like an audiobook. He's not reading it as an audiobook. He's just doing a live read for an audience. And the man's just command of the audience is wonderful. It is so entertaining because the intro part of it, when he's just introducing himself, or when he first gets to the stage and is introducing himself, the clever wordplay that he does there is just a lot of fun. It's a blast. But
that's fun. That's cool. I like that idea. I don't think I've ever experienced an audiobook that way.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I highly recommend it. But but I will say that episode 69 of Tower Junkies, I reviewed LT's Theory of Pets and All That You Love Will Be Carried Away. Both are in Everything's Eventual. They are my two favorite short stories in this collection. And I reviewed those with Kim C back in episode 69. I definitely recommend those two stories and that episode of the podcast.
Sweet.
Yeah. And All That You Love Will Be Carried Away. It's interesting because this collection has a very good share of atypical Stephen King stories. So LT's Theory of Pets is about the narrator telling the narrator of that story telling a story about his coworker's habit of telling the story of how his coworker and his wife were became separated or what have you. And it's through the kind of prism of the basic premise is that they had two pets, a dog and a cat. The dog, like one of them was the husband's, one of them was the wife's, and throughout the course of them like having the pets, they switched. Like the cat kind of bonded with the husband, and the dog bonded with the wife. But in perfect Stephen King fashion, it has this very just sudden darkness to it that really brings home like the themes of it really well. And then All That You Love Will Be Carried Away is a beautiful like story about a guy who is at the end of his rope and is contemplating doing something terrible, and it's really just beautiful. It's beautiful. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Nice.
Yep. So I recommend those, and yeah. Do you want to go on to talk about the movie adaptation of 1408 from 2007?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. So, of course, this one, for this review, we're going to do a non-spoiler review and spoiler review. I'll play a clip from the trailer to bring us into the spoiler section, or you can check the show notes for timestamps. You can also find those timestamps at towerjunkieспod.com/093. And to bring us into this review, and by the way, if you like this format of a review and everything, check out Obsessive Viewer, this is what we do in every episode. But 1408 was released on June 22nd, 2007. The premise, according to IMDb, is a man who specializes in debunking paranormal occurrences checks into the fabled room 1408 in the Dolphin Hotel. Soon after settling in, he confronts genuine terror. Director for the movie was Mikhail Hafstrom, and writers were Matt Greenberg, Scott Alexander, and Larry Karaszewski. And of course, it was based on the short story by Stephen King. The cast includes John Cusack, Samuel L. Jackson, Mary McCormick, and Tony Shalhoub. And Tiny, in non-spoilers, how did you feel about the movie adaptation of 1408?
I was very, very pleasantly surprised by this movie. I kind of loved it, actually. Like I was just not expecting it at all. I think when this came out back in the day, I thought it looked a little hokey and just a little maybe a little low budget to me or something. And I was a big douchebag because I was 20 years old. I like borderline hated John Cusack.
Oh yeah,
which is bullshit. Like I'm still not. I would not consider myself a John Cusack fan. Like, but I've liked him in certain things. Didn't like him in certain things. I've never understood. Like, if someone told me like, "Oh, I love John Cusack," I would just be like, "Why? Like, tell me why." Like, what? I mean, I've never been blown away by John Cusack.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of wrote it off for those reasons back in the day, which again, that's kind of bullshit. But so watching this now, I was just very pleasantly surprised at how much I liked this. I really love the changes and additions. Really, additions is probably the better word to use, that they made to the story and to the character of Mike Enslin. I thought they were really good ideas that added layers to the story, layers to the character. I have a few criticisms, but I mean, I gave this like 4 out of 5 stars,
nice.
Which just surprised the hell out of me. I mean, I just was not expecting to do that. I teared up and like cried at part of the movie.
Wow.
I was not expecting that at all. I was watching it on my phone, sitting on the floor on my lunch break. My phone, I didn't have anywhere to sit. Like, I worked a lot of construction sites and there's not like places to hang out. So like, I was like sitting on the floor with my phone box watching this movie today, and tear fell down my face. I was like, what the fuck? This is just so unexpected. Yeah, I really, really liked it.
Nice. That's very good to hear. I liked it too. I think I'm going to end up rating it on Letterboxd at 3.5 out of 5 stars. But I really enjoyed it. This was my first time seeing it as well. The emotional aspect of it didn't quite work on me for reasons I'll talk about in spoilers. But the thing I was struck by is that like you, I would not say that I'm a diehard John Cusack fan. At best, I've enjoyed his performances in some things, like, I mean, Hot Tub Time Machine and like High Fidelity was really good, but I also just kind of like, there's something about him that just kind of grates on my nerves in that, because it's very, I mean, you have to like he is very just a downer.
He's a douchebag.
Yeah, exactly. But something that just really clicked with me with 1408 is that his general demeanor in this movie, which is his general demeanor in just about every role I've seen him in, there's nothing really that new or interesting that he does that I've seen in terms of what he does as an actor, but there's just something so quintessentially Stephen King about his performance. Like, I feel like that just general persona of John Cusack as like just kind of not sad sack, but kind of like a very soft spoken or quiet talking person, feels like that is like the embodiment of that quintessential Stephen King writer character that's in like most of King's work. And I think that it's something that comes across really well in this movie. I think that's really really great.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I thought that Samuel L. Jackson was underused, but also there's really no way to really do more.
I had the exact same comment. Like, I wish I had more Samuel L., but how can you do it?
Exactly. Yeah. Like the entire premise, which is also something I found really impressive about the finished product of the movie, is that, I mean, the entire premise is this guy is stuck in a room. It's a single man in a room, and crazy stuff is happening. It's all disorienting. The real this is gonna sound so cliche and goofy, but the real character is the room 1408. But no, like it
oh shit, you're right, bro.
Right. Oh, wait till you hear what I think about New York City in this movie. But but no, like, I feel like the main focus of the movie, the biggest strength of the movie, is in the variety and the escalation of the terror that happens within this confined space. And it's not even a confined space, because the movie just allows itself to just branch out and create like this, not psychedelic, but like this very psychological horror experience for the character. And I think that in terms of like pacing and variety and just never letting up and never like not escalating, basically, like even when it seems like things are kind of calming down a little bit, we still as the audience know like, oh yeah, there's too much runtime left for this to be like anything other than, you know, building up towards something insane. And so just the pacing, the way that it's presented is just very, very well done, and was really great at holding my attention throughout the entire movie and keeping me very much engaged with it. And it's one of those things that like it's a great Stephen King adaptation because it takes what works in King's story, and I think that this is mostly due to it just being, you know, short fiction. And it expands upon that in ways that gets what the story's about and what the story is going for. And I think that combination just really works incredibly well in the finished product.
Hell yeah, man. I fully agree with all that. Yeah,
Yes.
That's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. I think the addition of, you know, giving Mike Enslin a family, he's dealt with loss, that like, if you just had Mike Enslin from the book, this would have been like a forgettable movie. Because I think For me, the emotional journey was potent, and it just really worked for me.
Nice.
And that was like my favorite part of the movie for sure. But I think without that, it would have been just a forgettable movie. Like not forgettable, but just so much less meat on the bone.
Yeah.
For this movie to deal with, you know, I really love that part.
Yes, and before we get into spoilers, I'll expand on this in spoilers, but I felt like the personal history aspect of Mike Enslin in this movie, I appreciated it. I appreciated the emotional journey and what like the character arc for this version of the character in this medium versus what's in the short story. I just think that whole subplot, that entire, like, all of that was introduced kind of way too late in the movie for me to really latch onto it. Because suddenly we get a ton of exposition, like we get a ton of detail as to where he's at in his life, and then like from there we understand like, oh yeah, now things are happening that are gonna play into that part of his life. And I'm just like, I kind of wish we would have known about that before, so that it wouldn't be played up like a surprise, but instead play it up as slowly transitioning from the crazy horror stuff and crazy like jump scare stuff, and just gradually bleed that over into this emotional horror stuff, but give us the context earlier so that we're not kind of gobsmacked by like, oh yeah, by the way, this happened to him, and now the room is going to feed off of that. Rather, like, introduce us to him as, oh, this thing happened, this is why he is the way that he is, and why he's in this position and everything. Oh, crazy stuff is happening. Now we're going to do the emotional stuff. So I don't know, that was my biggest complaint about the movie. But even then, at the end of the day, I still really enjoyed it. So it's a minor complaint, and I appreciate that they included that emotional stuff in the movie. I just think it could have been done better.
That is totally valid. I hadn't actually considered that, but you're right. We could have used some a better introduction to that backstory, and it could have been present much earlier. That's a good point. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, not a spoiler. One of my, like, the best line in the movie is Samuel L. Jackson just saying, "It's an evil fucking room."
Yes.
Like, God, that's just such a great line, because like, how do you describe this? Like, you know, you want to like dive into like, oh, it's like the haunting, and it taps into it's a haunted room. It taps into your psyche, and it picks things from trauma from your past, and you're just like, no, just let Samuel break it down.
Yeah,
it's an evil fucking room, and like Samuel L. saying "fuck" is like the rest of us saying hello. So,
oh, absolutely.
You know, in a PG-13 movie, and you know, the MPAA was just like, yeah, whatever. You know, it's, you get one, and does that even count as the one? We can give him a second one because it's Samuel. It's Samuel J. We'll let him get away with a couple.
Absolutely.
I love that. That was just a great fucking line.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's great too, because it is, like you said, it's all the information we need. We don't need to know the history of the room. We don't need to know what the source of the haunting is. We just know that it's an evil fucking room and crazy stuff is going to happen. And I think that is such a smart way to present it, and smart and confident way to present it. Because like, especially since it's King, and King is very much known for having a lot of detail in a lot of his work. Adapting something that doesn't have a lot of that to begin with, like, I could see the urge to expand on that and get mired in the details of that, rather than what we got in the finished product, which is yeah, let's just go ahead. We don't need to know exactly what the deal is. We don't need to know, like, we don't need some big exposition dump of the backstory of it. We just need to know that crazy stuff is going to happen, and we'll trust that the audience follows along and that the audience buys into it. And because of that like confidence, I bought into it hook, line, and sinker, and I thought it was fantastic.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the appearance of Senator Clay Davis himself.
Yes.
He got to that front door and was just like, shit.
That was awesome. That that was awesome. I was very pleased.
Such a great character actor. Like,
yeah.
Like, that's the nothing part. Like, he has maybe 3 or 4 lines. Mm. And it's just so fun because he's like, I'm not coming in there. I'm not going in that room. Like, it's just he's fun. He's so fun. I love every time he pops up.
Oh yeah. Kind of on a similar note, this is nothing. I mean, this is an anecdote, but I was tickled to see Tony Shalhoub pop up. Yeah. Specifically because I've said it before in our tenure as podcasters, but one of my favorite shows growing up was the sitcom Wings, which was Cheers in an airport. But what's interesting is that I did not know that Tony Shalhoub had appeared in anything Stephen King related. And he has a very limited role in this, but I just think it's interesting that, like, of the cast of Wings, like, Tony Shalhoub popped up here. Steven Weber was in the 90s Shining miniseries, and Tim Daly was in Storm of the Century. I'm just like, there's like, funny. Yeah, I'm just like, there's like a conspiracy. Like, I went to the Wings IMDb page and I was looking at all the other actors, and no, I don't think any of them have been in anything King related.
Well, what can we get Thomas Hayden Church in next?
Right? Yeah. Interestingly enough, this is I'm so sorry, a tangent, but is it Rebecca Shaw, who played Faye in Wings? She is 90. What? I think she's like 99. No, not 99. Jesus, no. She is. I can't math. She is 23 minus. Okay, yeah, she is 94 years old.
Damn.
Yeah, and she appeared in the Peacock time travel rom-com Meet Cute last year.
No shit.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's wild.
Call her ass up too. Shit. Let's make it let's try to get the whole remaining cast of the Wings and
exactly
the Stephen King verse. I'm game for it, man.
Yeah, Mike Flanagan, if you're listening, get her on to The Life of Chuck, or I mean, yeah, The Dark
Thomas
Tower.
Hayden Church can play Chuck.
Yes. Oh yeah. Well, Tom Hiddleston's already committed. Well, yeah.
I accept that.
Yes. Oh, yes. Which I believe that they just finished. I think they finished filming it.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, that's the little fun little anecdote about a '90s sitcom that I love.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you want to go into spoilers for 1408, Tiny, or is there anything else we want to talk about?
Trying to think. I don't think so. I think I just real briefly wanted to say I really appreciated, like, before we get to like the third act, like as I was watching this before we got to the third act and I was really into this movie, I was trying to like find things to latch onto. I really appreciated the set pieces of this movie. Like it really it stuck out to me. It felt fairly practical. Like, obviously there's CGI, but it felt pretty grounded. Like, they built a lot of sets of room 1408 and they stuck to this kind of cool, like, I like turn of the century kind of style, or like this like Art Deco-y kind of looking stylings of this room, and it felt like how I wanted that room to look. And the way they altered it with the not hallucinations, but the evolving level of horror that Mike Enslin's going through, they just really fully committed to it. And by the end, it's like a ruin that he's existing in and trying to get out of. And I just really appreciated this. There's a cool part. Well, I guess we'll talk about it in spoilers, but there's just a really cool part that I was like not expecting at all, and it involved the set, and it was just really cool. And that stuff doesn't always jump out to me, so I really appreciated it.
Nice. I definitely agree, and we'll talk more about that in spoilers. But let's go into spoilers then. Yeah, okay. We're going to go into spoilers for the movie 1408. I'll play a clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're going to be spoiling 1408, so go watch it if you haven't seen it yet. As of right now, I don't think it's really streaming anywhere. We watched a digital copy on my Vudu account. So hack into my Vudu account. But find a way to watch it and then come back and listen to our spoiler discussion. Here's a clip from the trailer for 1408.
Gerald Olin, manager of the Dolphin.
If I can just get the key to 1408.
In the 95 years of the hotel's existence, there have been 56 deaths in 1408.
56.
No one's ever lasted more than an hour. The first victims to Kevin O'Malley.
Cut his own throat.
Do not stay in that room.
Okay, so spoilers on for 1408, and I want to touch on a couple of things that probably could have been in non-spoilers, but there were a few different things that I interpreted. Well, I guess these would be in spoilers. So I interpreted several things as potential Stephen King references to other Stephen King works, and I wonder if you picked up on any of these. A couple of them are kind of deep cuts, or at least one of them is, but I'm going to, it's funny because like on like, social media and stuff, since Taylor Swift is huge right now, there's a lot of, stuff that's like, oh, like this, like decoding her secret messages and stuff, and like figure like Easter eggs for things like, and then like I just like when I see that I'm just like, oh, that's a little crazy, and then here I am like, okay, I wonder if this is a reference to this,
right?
But basically I'll run down a few of them. So when he goes out onto the ledge to walk across the ledge to get to the other room, to the next door room to get to the window, that this is a deep cut, but that like I kind of squealed with glee because I feel like that intentionally or unintentionally is like a reference to one of the coolest short stories in Night Shift, which I have long said is just like a freaking I don't use this word a lot, but a freaking gnarly short story collection. Like that is him writing to put food on the table, and he is going to some crazy, wild places that is just, it's wild. It's the collection that the Manglers and that we both read. Crazy King. But anyway,
was that Cocaine King by any chance?
I don't know, because that was in the early to mid 70s. So it was definitely before he got clean. I don't know if he had picked up the habit yet. But anyway, that story, The Ledge, I think it's called The Ledge. Basically, from what I remember, it's like a guy is lured to like a penthouse apartment of owned by like the husband of the woman that he is having an affair with. And the husband says that, you can have her, but I will kill her and you unless you walk around the perimeter of this high-rise apartment on this like little like foot long ledge that goes all around the building. And the entire story is him trying to go all around the building on this very small ledge. And it is, as someone who is deeply acrophobic, it is like I can't read the paperback edition of that because I don't want my hands to ruin the pages and the ink, because I I will my hands sweat so much from being just terrified of reading it because of the nature of the story and my absolute horrifying fear of heights.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's an endorsement right there.
Yes. So I was very happy when Mike Enslin walked on the ledge in this movie. Nice. Intentional reference or not, it's up in the air. But but the big one that I feel like this is kind of an obvious one, but I don't know if this was obviously intentional or anything, but the door in the middle of the room that he opens, it reminded me of the doors in The Drawing of the Three.
Word.
Classic.
Yep.
And then finally, when we get the whole, not finally, I have two more total. So, before I get to the finally one, the paintings kind of coming to life to an extent, or him being kind of in like this very just weird mesh of like the sea painting, reminded me vaguely of like Duma Key. And I feel like maybe there's other Stephen King stuff that could also be referencing, but then finally, the final one that I have is toward the end, when we have the fake out where he gets out of the room, he wakes up in the hospital, and he and his wife are reconciling, and he's working through what happened and everything. Them at the restaurant talking about things reminded me so, like, almost to the point of plagiarism that it reminded me of the ending of Misery.
Yes.
Like I got that vibe. So anyway, what your thoughts, Tiny?
I had the same thought in
Nice.
the restaurant part. Me too. Especially the movie Misery.
Yep.
The only thing that really jumped out to me as far as a reference was actually the book or the short story. I can't remember exactly what he says, but there's a brief part where he's talking about the light of the room, and it briefly, or it gave me kind of a flash of like maybe the deadlights.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Cause I mean, we don't know what the source of this evil is.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of taps into what you're afraid of, or, it gets into who you are as a person. And that's very much Pennywise the Clownish kind of thing. So,
yep.
That kind of made me think of that a little bit. So that's the only like connection I really made, I think. There may be another one, but but that's the main one. Obviously, The Shining, but we talked about that already.
Yeah.
So, the set piece I was going to talk about in spoilers was the part where the room is faking him out and makes him think that he got out and he's back in LA. At first, I was like, I hope this is not the end of the movie. I hope they didn't do this, because I was like, fuck you. That's lazy as shit, and I don't like that. But then the walls crumbled down, and we find out that he's still trapped in the hotel room. I just thought that was really cool. I just appreciated the practicality of that scene and that moment. Like, I think the fact that the characters that were around him in the post office in LA were people from the hotel.
Yep.
Was kind of goofy, because it's like we don't know these people. Like, no one took a note of what those people looked like, and like you literally had to show us who they were in a flashback, because no one remembered any of those people.
It's a very mid 2000, like mid aughts kind of thriller reveal.
Totally. Like, that part was kind of lazy and kind of goofy, and frankly, I did not need it. I didn't need that at all. But what I really liked was the part where they literally start destroying the post office and it reveals the hotel behind it.
Yep.
That was cool as shit. I thought, and again, it looked really practical. Like it could have been this lazy or not lazy, but like an easy CGI move to just have the walls crumble away or melt away, and it would have been, you know, decently effective, and I wouldn't have hated it or anything. Yeah. But I just think the fact that you had these guys with like sledgehammers literally breaking down the walls like in like a practical movie set way, like they're breaking through like the glass door and stuff. Like I just thought that was really cool, and like I don't know, for whatever reason, I thought it was a fun way to do that, and I just really enjoyed that part. That was just kind of cool, frankly.
Totally. And like, I also really appreciated the way that this movie utilized jump scares. Like jump scare kind of feels like a 4-letter word in the horror genre in movies. Yeah. And when they're done not well, or when they're used specifically as a crutch, it is terrible. Like it doesn't work. But in this movie, because it's a very small confined space, when we have those moments that are like the music playing on the radio, it often comes with something secondary to it. So like the quick the very loud jump of like, oh, the music's playing, and then he turns around and there's mints on the pillow, and then like later the display on the clock is having a countdown, and it's crazy and scary and all that. And then in that scene that you were referencing in the bank or the post office, we get like the loud banging of the glass breaking because the dude takes like the baseball bat to it, and just like the cacophony of violence in that is just really, really scary, in addition to being jumpy scary. And I think that that's something that just really worked for me, and it's something that I'm usually, like, I've gotten better about it, but I'm usually kind of just a little bit averse to, you know, the idea of jump scares for you know, instant gratification of shock, like instant shock gratification in the viewer rather than you know, building up something. And here I think is 1408 is a really good like marriage of those two things, like having jump scares that are shocking and immediate and instant gratification, but also containing things that really, really help contextualize it into an additionally scary element of it.
Yeah, for sure. That's a pretty good breakdown of the jump scares in the movie, I think. I agree. Yeah, like that was they were used fairly well, you know. And I have a similar relationship to, I think, most people at this point. You know, it's kind of a tired thing, but it can also be effective. So
absolutely.
I kind of wanted to give a shout out to old John Cusack in this movie. Like, this is one of probably my favorite roles I've seen him in, I think. Yeah. And it's not because he's like particularly amazing or anything. I just think I was impressed with him because the lion's share of the acting is on his shoulders. He's alone in a room, and that is hard to do. That's hard to do.
He's forced to carry the movie. Yeah.
He's forced to carry. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Yeah. He could have either totally failed at that and just sucked it up, or gone way over the top.
Yeah.
And he didn't do either of those. He maybe flirted with the line a little bit at one point, but I have no issues with his performance. I like his performance, actually. I especially appreciated the flashbacks and stuff to when his daughter was still alive and everything. Mm-hmm. I agree that it was a bit, the timing of it or the placement of it, like that you talked about earlier, how it should have been introduced or hinted at earlier. Fully agree with that. But those flashbacks, I think him with his daughter and his wife, it just felt really natural. Like I think both him and Mary McCormick and the girl playing his daughter, like there's some home movie kind of stuff. It just felt really organic and natural and just came across really well. And I think that was an added layer of authenticity to the background that made it more, much more damaging and traumatic when it was used against him by the room. I just really liked that part and thought it was great. And you know, I don't know why I hated John Cusack so much. I think it's just because so many people like really like him, and I'm just like, what? I mean, he's fine. And I thought even back then I was like, he's been good a couple times, but he's a decent actor. He really is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I was just a douchebag, I guess.
Yeah. In my douchebag era, I got very hung up on how mopey he was and all of the roles I'd seen him in. But
right.
But yeah, but like I referenced, like Hot Tub Time Machine is great, and I like him in it.
Sure.
For
sure.
Also, kind of a mid 2000s thriller, Identity. He was very, very solid in that.
Pretty solid, yeah.
Yeah.
The Runaway Jury, that was a decent.
I never saw that one.
Yeah, it's a decent movie. Kind of a little bit procedural, but solid movie. And
is that a John Grisham story?
Could be. I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I'll dive into more Cusack stuff.
Yeah. The last big thing for me, I kind of hinted at it in before spoilers, was, you know, I talked about the emotional journey really just totally gripped me and pulled me in. And for me, the culmination of it obviously is just the part where it's like the cruelest fucking thing I can imagine, where the room gives him his daughter back.
Yes.
And he's trying to resist it and fails and gives into this, knowing that it's not really her. And then they kill his daughter in his arms.
Yeah.
Like that's,
yes.
I was dying. I was like, holy shit, this is rough, man. I just wasn't expecting it to go that hard. Like, and it's really simple. Like there's no CGI. There's no incredibly deep, meaningful writing in here. There's some pretty damn good acting from John Cusack, which again, really liked him in that. But it's just a really simple scene, but it's all this build up, this build up to this crescendo, you know, and they just freaking nailed that crescendo. I thought it was really, that scene killed me, and it was like in a good way.
Yeah. Like, it's so interesting because that scene in particular worked incredibly well for me for all the reasons you stated, even with that element of the plot being something that I felt was maybe a little bit lackluster overall. That killed me for a couple of reasons. One is that the dialogue, I feel like you can barely register what he's saying, but like, there are a couple of lines where he's just like, don't do this again. Like, I can't lose her a second time or something like that. And just like, that is devastating. And like you said, it is very like lo-fi. It's very just like simplistic. When she goes limp in his arms and she like does the whole like, oh, I'm dead thing. Like it might be the positioning of it, and this may be intentional, but like I was like, it felt like we were watching like a huge dramatic moment in like a Shakespeare play or something. Like it felt very theatrical in the like theater sense. And it works, and he nailed it. It was great.
For sure. Yeah. I was kind of blown away a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of probably my final thing that I have for spoilers is that I also really appreciate and think that it works really well the last scene, the very end of the movie. I think that is such a good way to end the movie and communicate this, I guess, kind of pay homage to the growth of the character from being a skeptic to a believer, but also being like just ending on this shock note of like, oh yeah, it recorded everything and it really happened, and now she knows it really happened, and like it's that perfect kind of ending where I'm like, I want to see the scene that occurs after that. I want to hear that conversation. Like, I want to see what happens to these people after this, like after he presses play on that tape.
Absolutely. I was going to say basically the same thing. I really liked that denouement, that final scene was really well done. And, that wasn't in the book. I mean,
No.
And it's funny because that scene I loved in the book in the end where, Mike Henson's like, don't go in there, like that growth was so cool. It's sort of I don't want to say it's a throwaway line in the movie, but it's brief and it's fine, but it's just not something I focused on in the movie.
Yeah.
But then we get this scene at the very end, at the denouement, the very last scene, that was totally flooring and just great. And I thought it was awesome too. I really loved it.
Nice. Yep. Same here.
Sweet.
Any other thoughts on 1408, either the short story or the movie or the number?
I do like the arbitrary nature of the number, I think. Because I think it's easy to go for a 13 number, right?
Well, that's the thing. I just realized you didn't. I assume you didn't read the author's note. And it's referenced in the movie. Like in the author's note, King says, he says, let me find it real quick. He says, I
know it technically is 1308 because it's the 13th floor, but
But he says, in any case, let's check in, shall we? Here's your key, and you might take time to notice what those 4 innocent numbers add up to. And like all 4 of them add up to 13.
Okay. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I saw that in the. Yeah, I did realize that.
Yeah,
I just kind of forgot about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I liked it, and like an idiot, like a tower junkie. When I read that in the author's note before seeing the movie and everything, I was like adding it up. I was like, wait, that doesn't add up to 19. How does? Wait, I was trying to do math multiple times because I was like, wait, am I wrong? But no, it adds up to 13.
That's awesome.
Okay, well, is there anything else, or should we kind of wrap things up?
I'm ready to wrap up, yeah.
Nice, same here. Well, that is our review of 1408, the short story, and the movie adaptation. Let us know what you thought of this, of all of this, everything, anything, really. You can find us on social media, Tower Junkies Pod. Also check out the other shows, The Obsessive Viewer and Anthology, which is my solo sci-fi podcast about the Twilight Zone and science fiction theater and Black Mirror. Also, couple of things. One, I forgot to mention that in the interim between the last episode and now, I wrote an essay for Midwest Film Journal about the Dark Half movie adaptation. So check that out as part of their No Sleep October series that they have every year. I was honored that mine was the one that closed it out on Halloween.
Nice.
So check that out. And also, if you want to reach out to us, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. And also, I never mentioned this on any of the shows because I keep forgetting, but we do have merch. We have a TeePublic store. There's a link in the show notes. So if you want shirts or hats or anything. I haven't been on the TeePublic store in a long time, but if you want stuff that's branded with our logo, you can do that and we get a little bit of money from it. So check that out. Tiny, any last words?
Nope. It was awesome. Good,
nice.
Good chatting with you, bud.
Good chatting with you too. And next time on the show, I'm not sure what we're going to do, but we might try to throw together 2 episodes for December, reviewing Cell the novel and Cell the movie. We'll see if that comes out, but I'll start playing us out. Once again, check out the patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Tons of content, but if you want just Stephen King stuff, there is a tier just for Stephen King related stuff. Every week on Sunday, I post something Stephen King related. I've been doing it for 30 consecutive weeks with no end in sight. So check that out. Thank you guys so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. For the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, such as early access to episodes, TV, book, and movie reviews and reaction recordings, commentary tracks, and Patreon potpourri episodes, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. And because of that, she does not have a sense of self. She does not have her own individuality. And in that, she also has remorse for things that she's done or things that have happened to her that have made it has made her life feel empty. In particular, terminating the pregnancy. She did not have a kid, so they do not have children. And there is this like underlying feeling throughout the story as she's kind of thinking about that she regrets that. She regrets not having children. I think that that's kind of the underlying subtext of the story. It's a little bit up in the air or up for interpretation, but that's kind of my read of it. And it's just really rich the way that King writes it. And what's amazing to me is that I've been talking for however long, and I haven't even scratched the surface of the main concept of the story. The fact that there's this feeling of deja vu and how she keeps thinking about it, and there's this sense of impending doom.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.